So what is the future of the Martha Stewart empire and Martha Stewart herself? With us this morning are two guests with a wealth of knowledge about marketing and public relations. Bob Altmans is president of Skutsky & Altmans, one of Pennsylvania's largest independent public relation firms. Dr. Audrey Gusky is an associate professor of marketing at Duquesne University's School of Business. Welcome to both of you.
Morning, John.
Bob, you've been involved in crisis management for companies from a public relations standpoint. What's your advice to Martha Stewart?
Well, Martha's had her day in a court of law now. Now the fate of the future of her company really rests in the court of public opinion. So far, it looks like she's going to do better than a lot of people would have expected before the trial began. When she walked out onto the steps of the courthouse and held that impromptu press conference, she said, "I'll be back." And Wall Street responded by increasing the stock of Omnimedia by 37%. So far, the indications on the street are good for the future of the company. The problem I'm concerned about would be, will the public really embrace Martha for not having been contrite enough on the steps of the courthouse? The conventional wisdom in advising executives or corporations who are under the spotlight in situations like this is to be contrite, express some remorse, demonstrate your regret over the situation, and ask for a second chance with the court of public opinion. Time will tell whether those 1,500 letters that the judge got really reflect the sentiment of Martha Stewart's market.
Yeah, clearly no apology from Martha Stewart. Audrey, has that impacted her products, her sales over the last couple of years?
Well, her sales have pretty much held their own since, all came to the front. And her products have done pretty well these past couple months, I think increasing by about 6%. Magazine has done a little bit poorly, but it seems like it's holding her, she's holding her own on that. And the TV show, my understanding is going to be put on a hiatus for a while. When you take the homemaker of perfection and you look at all that she's done and she's achieved, and she's a strong individual, and maybe she didn't apologize, but that's not who she is. And her loyal followers and her fans are there because they see her as more human. She's made mistakes and she's erred. She's still Martha, and she's still a very strong individual, very independent, and going to say and do what she has always done. And I think in a way that's a positive thing for her. It's good the sentencing is over because now she can move on with it.
So you really would disagree with Bob. You don't think an apology is something that she needs to do?
Well, she probably should have done it initially, but she hasn't not done that because that's not her nature, and she wasn't going to become someone that she's not. And so by being who she is and being the aggressive, proactive business person and not really sitting back and apologizing or being contrite, in a way it's probably worked in her favor. I think when she compared herself to Nelson Mandela, that was probably a bit much. And when she's selling her products on the steps of the courthouse, that was, I think, too much. But believe it or not, it's worked for the people that have respected her and followed her all along.
Well, I guess the question, Bob, is will it work in the future? Not apologizing, not saying she's sorry. Clearly, she's strong and feisty as ever.
We're breaking new ground here. As I said, the conventional wisdom would have been to have been a little bit more contrite. And in this era of visibility and transparency among corporate executives, cases like Enron and Tyco and Adelphia, where you see video images on television of executives being led out of a courthouse in handcuffs, here we have Martha Stewart being defiant, almost to the point of rubbing some people the wrong way with that moment on the courthouse steps, hang in there with us, buy our products, support our magazine. We'll see whether that works or not. I would be concerned if this sets a precedent for executives not demonstrating more corporate social responsibility and taking responsibility for the actions of themselves and for their companies.
Do you agree with that, Audrey?
Well, it could be an issue. I think we have to bring in the fact that she's a woman, too, and a woman executive, and this is one of the we are setting new grounds, and so I think partly because of her feminine nature, she didn't want to be too contrite because then she would appear too passive, and so I think the fact that she's a woman caused her, and probably her strategies that she worked out with all of her consultants said, stand your ground and be firm, and don't beg for apologies, but tell them you're there and you're going to continue to stay there with them.
I want to come back to both of you and talk a little bit more about Martha Stewart and really what it is she has to do to turn her empire around. We'll have much more on the Sunday Business page. Stay tuned. I'm John Delano, and welcome back. We are talking about Martha Stewart with Bob Oltmans and Audrey Gusky, two of our local residents on public relations and crisis management. Let me ask you both, this is the Martha Stewart Living magazine. I just went out and picked up a copy. And if I understand correctly, this magazine has really lost subscribers, about 22%. But the real big hit has come in advertising. You know, 45% of the advertisers are no longer advertising in Martha Stewart's magazine. That's got to really hurt, does it, Bob?
Yeah, of course it hurts. I mean, magazines of that size really make their revenue off the advertising revenue more so than the subscription base. So 52% drop in advertising revenue is a substantial hit. But the magazine is still afloat. It's still available. But we've seen a lot of television stations in local markets dropping her television programming. I think while she has some time to think about it over the next 5 months, Martha Stewart's going to need to think of how to reinvent herself. While I think the company is, and the brand, the Martha Stewart brand, is going to be certainly strong enough to survive this, it may not be through the channels that built the empire in the first place. She may need to redirect some of the power of that brand into other media.
Would you have a recommendation on how to do that, Audrey?
Well, if anybody can do it, Martha can do it. I mean, she's reinvented so many things and been so powerful in the marketplace and set boundaries and gone beyond a lot of things people can expect. What I find interesting, she said a role model is Walt Disney. And she's sort of looked at his empire and said, and this was even before any of the problems that she had in some of the interviews she did, and she said she wanted to become a family name, you know, and a name that people could recognize. Unfortunately, she didn't want to do it this way. But I think once things settle down and once she served her time, I think she's going to bounce back. She's very resilient and she's very strong.
Do you think advertisers will come back to this magazine?
I think they're going to start coming back. I think they were waiting to see what would happen. The fact that she got the light sentence is a good sign. The fact that sales have continued as far as her merchandise to pick up and grow. And I think the readership is going to start. And some of it might be a curiosity factor, but a lot of it, I think, is the loyalty of the customers and the people that have followed her for years, and that's going to continue. So I think I really think that after a year or so, we're all going to see things turning around, and she's going to be very successful again.
And Bob, you see that too?
Yeah, I do. I'm not proud to say this, but unfortunately, we as a society have a very short memory. I think Audrey's right. In a year from now or so, a lot of this will have been long forgotten. Provided that she doesn't make another misstep somewhere between now and then, I think there's every opportunity for Martha Inc. to rebound very nicely, whether it's through the magazine, some of her merchandising, or other media, as I mentioned a moment ago. I do think she'll be back, and if the court of public opinion does hang with her, like I think she is banking on it hanging with her, whether it be through the magazine or some other media, the web, Martha will be back.
Well, I have read somewhere that her company, that the president and CEO of her company intends to drop some references to Martha Stewart. That is, her name will not appear as much, not be identified as much. Is that a smart strategy, Audrey?
I'm not sure, because Martha is the company. She is the image, and she has set it up that way. She has used synergy and gone beyond that. I mean, because everything that she's done sort of fits in with one another and works together like a real well-oiled machine. And so I think by having her dropped as far as visibility goes, I think that would be a mistake, because she's been such a strong figurehead, and I think they really need to continue to have her there. Maybe she's not the leader of the company per se when she's behind bars, but her image and her starting the company is still very strong, and people remember that.
But dropping references, could that be just an effort to try to bring back the advertisers?
It could. Time will tell whether that was a smart strategy or not. We're going to find out just how strong the Martha Stewart brand really is when you see her name disappear from the magazine. My hunch is that the brand is becoming bigger than Martha, and that the brand will survive regardless of whether or not her name and her face are literally attached to it.
Well, clearly there cannot be a soul in America who hasn't heard about Martha Stewart or seen her picture somewhere. And you gotta believe that if there's a loyal fan base out there, it doesn't have to be 100% of America. In fact, it doesn't even have to be 20% of America to make money for the Martha Stewart company.
Exactly. She is the image, and she has done, I think, everything that she's expected to do as far as becoming this household name. And I think by downplaying her image is a bad thing. No one lives forever. And I mean, she had these legal issues, but what if, you know, eventually her life passes on, or, you know, other companies have experiences, but Martha Stewart Living is Martha Stewart. And so I think they need to, in a sense, start setting the successors, you know, stages, so to speak.
Well, Audrey Gusky and Bob Oltmans, thank you both very much for joining us and helping us understand a little bit more about Martha Stewart. We'll be back with more of the